Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome back. If you happen to be viewing on the web or wherever you might be checking out what's going on with our Wind Band Symposium this weekend. We're just back from a short lunch break, and the students are involved in some master classes at this time with our studio faculty here at Westchester University. And we thought that we would take a little bit of time to discuss some issues that our band directors who are attending today wanted to get a little bit of feedback on. But we thought that we might just start a little bit and have them express some of the things that they've been able to observe so far this morning from our clinicians and some of the experiences that their students have had. So Carol Luddy from Easton High School, you want to start?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is to see their reaction to some of the things that, they're taught daily, but when brought into a new life, a new form, the excitement that they have, almost like that's clarified that this is the right way to do things, and that ownership of that music once again. So I think that's really exciting to see them just get excited again about the same things that maybe we've been doing all along, but just said in a different way, or just because you were very excited about what you're doing and passionate, also they've fed off of that as well. And for me personally, it's you never get to hear your band. You're always in the middle of your band. So for me to sit back, it gets very emotional to watch how excited they were to respond to you. And it just makes you get a little bit taller and feel better about, okay, we're doing some things right here, because they responded so well to both of you. It was exciting.
Yeah, Carol said it perfectly. My students worked with Dr. Sedetol and Dr. Martin this morning, and they have been saying everything that I've been saying since January when we were working on this new lit, and just the way it was said, I guess, clicked with them. And what's special, I guess, in my situation is that the ensemble doesn't meet as a full group until after school. They're split up into different classes. So them hearing each other, this is the first time that they're hearing everything being put together. And now everything that is being said is making more sense. The just simple things like entrances and releases were starting to become better just from them listening, being in a new space. They were more attentive. So it was just great to see everything happening kind of very quickly all at once today. So good morning.
Thanks, Brian Cox from Central Bucks South High School. And now we have Jeff Mark from Pocono Mountain West.
I think, too, it was very exciting for me to watch my students in the rehearsal. Like Carol said, to kind of sit back and watch, but to see, it seemed like every individual in my band brought themselves to a new level of both focus and performance, just by working with the two clinicians that they worked with. Mr. Casagrande and Dr. Martin both worked on sound, getting a great sound, and to see all of my students try really hard to get that great sound, it was neat. So.
Great. And maybe a bit from the clinicians about some general observations about the clinics this morning, and things we were able to see in the groups, and what we look forward to this afternoon.
One of the keys to, or at least one of the markers I use for a successful clinic, is that I don't want to stop clinicking. Like, we get to the end of the time, I still have a lot to say, and they're attentive. I said that to the last group, and both of mine this morning were just terrific, because the kids were there, they were excited about what they were playing, they were into it, they could speak about the music. When I asked questions, they could answer me back and with the right answers, and it was very nice. And so we were able to talk not just about the technique and ensemble sound, blend and balance, obviously very important, but we were also able to talk about the music too, which is asking them questions about how they felt about this. Where does the music go? Where are we trying to go to? Where are we coming from? All those kind of things, which are keep students interested, I think, particularly when you have You have to work on technique. You have to work on ensemble sound, which can be maybe boring, mundane to them. But if you can talk about music as well, combined with that, all of a sudden things perk up. So both of the rehearsals this morning I thought were really, really good. I'm looking forward to the third one.
I also enjoyed seeing some of the strong foundations that the kids are coming from, and that goes back even to yesterday afternoon, that the kids are coming in, and just to see the eagerness on their faces, that they're here to, and they're open to suggestion, and I haven't seen one eye roll, since we've been doing this, and that's a good thing, It's like, so many times I've clinic bands and somebody, just give you that slight eye roll, and when you're working in front of the group, we're giving everything that we have. We're not just being passive about it, and yet to see that enthusiasm coming back to the kids without any hesitation about what we're trying. And the part of my clinics has been that warm up that I've been doing. And let's face it, warm ups are not exactly the most fun thing in the world to do, but I've seen improvement from the beginning of the session to when I finish, but I've also seen a willingness, like, okay, they're buying into what I'm selling, and when you're the director of a school and you're going to do something like that, you have a little bit of a different muscle on the kids, because you're giving them, they know they have to do it. When they come to something like this and they're listening to it and buying into it, that says a lot about them and about the background that they have, that they're willing to learn. And I think that's, and it was great fun, to work with from Easton and Pocono Mountain, to see the enthusiasm there, because that's where I grew up, those two areas, and taught. And so it's like, it's good to see that there's still strong traditions there and some really good teaching going on. And that's for me the most rewarding.
For me, it's kind of a personal thing. I love when I've been working with the groups, and I've had this with all 5 groups thus far, and I'll be able to make some kind of slight positive adjustment to the sound, and we'll play a phrase of music and then stop, and you'll see the kids go, that sounded really good. Where they're recognizing, they're picking up on the fact that their sound is changing, and it's changing in a positive. And all we've done is just made just a slight adjustment, maybe in balance, or a slight adjustment in how they're approaching the note, or how they're listening to one another. Just kind of give them a new way to think about it, and just to watch the reaction on their faces. That's probably, for me, that's the most gratifying part, is to see those light bulbs going on all the time.
Great. We had a little bit of a discussion in last night's round table about programming, and I think that yesterday it was more in the context of how are we going to be able to allot enough time and schedule rehearsal time and budget our resources to be able to perform everything that we'd like to on a program. The topic came up today, a question about what do we program for different kinds of things, and how are we able to achieve a balance, not even concert by concert, but within our program, so that we could give our students a great all-around experience. And Carol, I'd like to turn it over to you and see if you might be able to set that up a little bit for us.
Sure. So being from the generation I'm from, which was mainly bands were playing transcriptions, orchestral transcriptions, by the time I became an educator, the wind band program was starting the new literature to make it to public schools, to now today, more of the pressure of playing more of the modern wind band music within our programs. But yet trying to find, should there be a balance that we're still educating them with the war horses, the marches, in addition to the modern. And taking it to the step why I bring the question is, you take your band to an adjudication of what you would like to think is people will understand where you're coming from, but then you get comments about, well, you're not playing wind band music. You need to make it more modern. But yet my standpoint is, you know, I always thought it's good to know where we came from and also where we're going, in that balance. So how do you find that right education for your students and not be humiliated in front of them when an adjudicator says, why did you do that?
Want to jump in, Kevin?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let me understand. They're criticizing the fact that you're doing transcriptions?
Correct.
Or not, it wasn't only transcriptions that you noted, you know, even some pretty significant older repertoire. So.
Wow. That just because I mean I do all kind of new music, all kinds of it, but I also try to do the most traditional as well because it's extremely important. It's part of our repertoire. Transcriptions are part of our repertoire. They just are. That's how when we had no repertoire, that was it. That's the only thing we had to turn to. And in the day when those were popular, the people that were the band conductors, they modeled after the maestro of the orchestra. And that's why we have the large symphony bands. That's why they were like that, because they're trying to model the symphony orchestra in terms of the string numbers. So we have, you know, why there's 24 or 30 clarinets on stage. So it's all of that. That's what the model was. Why would you not play a transcription of fantastic music? Now, do all transcriptions work? No, and some shouldn't be played. Some should not be played. But there's some that work quite well, particularly pieces that are so wind-oriented anyway that the string parts are not really, you don't notice that they're gone. I do big transcriptions every year. And I will tell you that it's one of the highlight concerts. Students love to do it. Crowd loves it. So I would say anything that I wouldn't worry about it. I would say anything that you choose to play, do it at the highest level you can, and then don't worry about it. But I would continue to program a variety of literature. Marches, older pieces, war horse pieces, new pieces. It's all vital. It's all important. It's because we have to represent. Let's not get caught, no offense to my orchestra colleagues, but let's not get caught in the museum of only playing a certain set of pieces. We don't have to do that. We don't have to. They have to because the public demands it, and that's how they fill the concert halls. We can do anything we want to. Anything. So let's enjoy that. So I'd say play both ends of it. Pick the best. Not all new music is good. Just because it's new does not mean it's good. The latest and greatest, whatever, fill in the composer name, is not always the best music. It's good to travel back to, you know, the mid 50s and 60s and get those core, you know, Persichetti, Giannini, whatever the case may be. Get those pieces. They're great. They're great pieces. You know, that was our core repertoire. And before that, it was the transcriptions. And there are some great ones. Again, there's some not good ones either. And there's some bad pieces from the 50s and 60s too. We all have that. So pick the best of what we have to offer. That's what I would say.
There's always been a question that I've heard about keeping a balance in programming. And I came up with this kind of a formula that music that's available for WINS falls basically into three categories, the way I did it. The transcriptions, what I call band classics, and then the newer music. And what I always try to do was to try to pick two out of the three. So if I did a transcription, I might do a band classic, or I might do a transcription and a newer piece, or a classic band piece and a newer piece. So it's a mixture, and I always felt like I was giving my students the best of all of those. The thing that I see in adjudication sometimes is bands that do, you know, two pieces and they're the same. You know, the same piece no matter how you cut it. And so the balance there is like, what kind of experience are these kids having? And then I also look at transcriptions. I mean, I come from my generations, like you. It's like, you know, I want my kids to experience Nabucco, right? Or, you know, like, you know, the Italian overtures or stuff like that. That's the easiest way in the world to teach musicality and phrase and line and all the traditional elements of what we know as performance music. And I feel it's unfortunate now because I hear less and less and less. And I'll tell you what I hear. I've talked to some directors and they're afraid to do the transcriptions because it opens up things that are not, you know, that expose whatever it is. But my point is this: you can do a transcription. You don't need to take it to an adjudication or a festivals of music or something like that. You can do it at a spring concert, but your kids, you owe it to your students to teach them that. They need. Okay, if I'm a saxophone player, what chance do I have of playing in an orchestra and playing Verdi? You know, I have none. So, you know, or a euphonium player, it's the same thing. Give them that opportunity to experience the great composers that are out there. And you know, it's just unfair, I think, to not do that whole genre of music.
Greg, you had a interesting kind of analogy about how we go about this yesterday.
With a menu again?
Oh yeah, with my relationship to food. I won't bore the viewers today with my preoccupation with food again. But I mean, just very simply, a lot of times when I try to program, I try to act like I'm putting together a meal of some sort, you know, with your meat, your vegetable, your starch, and all this stuff. With regards to what Carol was talking about with adjudication, and kind of playing off what John said, when I was teaching public school, after I got my march picked, and I would usually tend to go more toward a more obscure march that had some quality stuff to it, rather than just sticking to the standard marches. I would, you know, delve into some European marches and things like that. But I would always, for my two pieces, I would try to pick stuff that was contrasting, sort of like what he was saying in regards to genre, but also like I might pick a multi-movement piece and then something more single movement modern, or, you know, a classic or a modern, something like that, where I had some contrast with that kind of stuff. But this whole idea about ignoring where we came from our classic literature, that's kind of been my soapbox issue. When Kevin and I were at Texas together almost 20 years ago now, it really hurt me when I would stand in front of the Texas ensembles and I would talk to the students about Persichetti and Clifton Williams and people like that, and they were like, who? I've never heard of these people. And that just right then, I was like, okay, that's going to be the rest of my life's work, is to make sure that college students are coming out of my ensembles not only knowing who these people are, but experiencing the great music that they wrote for us. So trying to get that nice balance of something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue.
Can I interject one other thing?
John, please.
We're talking about high school and college groups, basically, right now, right? My sympathies go to middle school groups because they're, and actually some of the smaller high school bands that only can play like grade 4 music or 3 or something like that, the limitations on their music is even more ridiculous than what we experience. And unfortunately, I wish some of those directors would start looking at more of the folk music that's out there, the transcriptions of folk music, and even some of the transcriptions. I would rather have a student at that age play a poor transcription of a Bach prelude and fugue than to play some of the other music that's out there that's nowhere near that quality. I'll take a bad transcription of a Bach prelude and fugue over some of the other things that are out there, and maybe I can fix it a little bit, but at least the kids are having a better musical experience than some of the publications that are out there.
Well, and when I was teaching middle school, I found Andy Ballant has come out with some really nice transcriptions that have kept the integrity of the original piece of music and made it playable. Like with my group, he did a great arrangement of Italian and Algiers. And it was very playable by my middle school band. And it gave me such great pleasure walking down to lunch and hearing band kids walking down the hallway singing Italian and Algiers. You know, and here's little sixth graders singing that music. And I knew I was getting to them that way. But you have to be careful with those transcriptions, but there are good ones, simplified versions out there of all this great literature that we're talking about that's available.
Sam, we offered a number of different director perspectives. How about a perspective maybe from the other side of the podium as a player?
This is getting very interesting, this discussion, because let's talk about the diet for the people on the other side of the podium. If they're in a balanced band, repertoire-wise, their transcriptions are actually a stretch because the phrases were often written for string players. They can talk, eat lunch, and smoke a cigarette while they play their parts in professional orchestras before they ever have to take a breath. So you're going to challenge them to be dedicated to lines that are almost physically impossible in some of these arrangements. And to conquer those problems means to get into more personally orchestrated pieces in the middle 1960s, where they realized the limitations, the breath limitations, let's say, of the instrument. It's easier to play than the transcription was. But during the transcription, you're learning some of the greatest lines ever written. And now you're going to deal with music you understand possibly less harmonically, but you're going to launch into it from a linear standpoint with the same dedication you did with the music you understood. So to have transcriptions next to the mid-20th century music, and then to come up to today and do the modern music, to be brought up on either one of those only would be very limiting. So it's just on the physical demands of your players, you're getting a balanced diet, and you're going to get wider range ability, and you're going to have people enjoying when they're in the mid ranges that were used for those transcriptions. There were rules back then. You didn't go past a certain point. But within that, the lines were longer and more mellifluous, and the imitation of other instruments is what classical music was based on. You have to play tuba, you have to play oboe on the tuba in a classical music group. You have to be able to articulate. So to pose those problems and have them solved inside of a great transcription is valuable. And going back to middle school, I happened to be in a system where the middle school band director was the high school band director. So he taught in a Persian market so that we would play Samson and Delilah in high school better. He would set himself up. So he would teach styles, breaths, rhythms, how to speak Spanish, on the way to doing Clifton Williams, later on, by doing easy pieces. But interesting to balance that was everything in my generation. So we don't want to tilt that balance in any way because there's a hole. There's a hole in the instrumental ability of a player that hasn't had those challenges posed to them. Yeah. So we owe it to them.
Those young students, regardless of what we're going to use to get them excited about music, often they play a transcription, and that's their entry into some of the greatest music we've ever experienced in this world. So if that's the way we're going to do it, I think we need to offer that to them. Yeah. Okay. The another thing that we talked about, just trying to problem solve a little bit, is we have a couple of younger teachers on our in our group today, and they were asking about different strategies we might employ to help bridge the gap between some of the more motivated students in our ensembles and some of the students who we may want to see making stronger commitments to the organization. How can we create an environment for the students in our ensembles that's going to inspire and try to bring everyone along to work for really high levels of excellence? Jeff, you want to talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, sure. I'm in my second year at the high school level, and I'm just noticing this year some like varying commitment levels where I have some kids who are really practicing a lot, and other students who aren't having that same commitment to our group. And you know, I try to do a variety of things, like playing tests, and we do repertoire checks where, you know, I talk to them about being committed to the group, and you know, just for themselves, knowing that they did a great job on their part, and still feel like there's a gap, and I don't know. I'm kind of searching for how do I fix that? How do I get everybody motivated?
My comment is, having gone through, starting in a new program, that's at the high school level. I think I think it's important that you reward the students who are making that commitment and acknowledge them, okay? And, you know, as you're there longer, it's all kind of going to settle. You know, the dust is going to settle around that. And I think what you want to do is confirm to students that are making that commitment that that's what they're supposed to be doing. That you recognize the fact that they are being positive about things, or whatever the case may be. And it doesn't have to be in front of the rest of the group. I think that's important, that it's not. Okay, but just to kind of confirm to those kids, this is what I want, you know, this is what you're doing. And that message will get across to some of the students that have less of a commitment. It won't get to everybody, but the fact is that at least the students that are doing what you want are aware that you're pleased with what they're doing. And I think that helps at least keep them working toward what you want.
Carol, you have some strategies you might be able to?
I have found that with those students, even though I'm kind of shy on the podium in front of others in my own comfort zone, I'm very animated and happy and kind of nutty, if you will, with the band kids. And I find that the kids that aren't giving what we deem as enough are usually the ones that are most insecure on their instruments, and they're afraid to be embarrassed. It's not that they don't want to put the time in, it might be that they don't know how to put the time in. So I, like was just stated, we'll send a message, or we use Remind at our school, and we'll meet in a practice room, or we'll do something. I'll put a flute quartet together with two of those in, or do something to draw them in a positive nature, and then to have that sidebar conversation. Look how much better you're playing now, and then all of a sudden they're putting in more time. I've never been one, even though I have to put a grade, I've never really done that. I won't use grading because I feel it's so much in the heart playing music that to put a grade to it stifles the heart from growing with them. So I'm not saying that every kid buys into that, but I traditionally, at least in Easton, find that any kid who's not giving me that extra, because they all want to be at these events, they all want to achieve, it's just because they're afraid. And knowing our kids, I would bet you that's a lot of it. Yep.
There are different reasons for students joining the group. And as much as we would love for this to only be about music, for some of those kids, it won't be as serious about music as it will for others. I have two kids that have gone through band. One was very serious about music, and he's finishing up a music ed degree right now in college. My daughter is in band. She plays in the top band, but she doesn't give a lick about practicing. She plays flute so she can be in the color guard, but she plays well enough to be in the top band because that was a goal for her. I don't know if it was a goal for her musically or it was a goal for her to please dad, you know. But the amount of practice she does, it's only at when the when the recording is due for whatever the exam is. That's when the practice occurs. And she plays well enough that she can make the recording, and it's all fine. And I tensed up about that for a long time. Then, like, you know what? Band is for, these things are different for different people. So what I would do in your particular situation is seek those kids out, and maybe it's not a musical thing that you attach them to, but they're there for some reason. They want to be part of a group, even though they might seemingly, it might be, well, this is not really that cool, but I'm gonna, okay, how do you attach them? Maybe it's not music. Maybe okay, I need you to be in charge of setting up the room. I need you to be in charge of this. Give them something that empowers them a little bit, and it might not be about music. And then all of a sudden, they are part of and connected. And then, now that you've got them in, then you work from the inside. Now, let's talk about the music and how can we make this better? And what can you do to help our group now through your instrument? You've done all of this. It's just another bent on all of this. What we do is there's so much psychology and and that goes into what we're trying to get these kids to do, and we take them from all kind of experiences. We have, in many cases, we have no idea what's going on at home, and that what they do at school may be their, it may be their sanctuary. And there are plenty of kids like that, to where that's the only thing that's saving them is what happens at school. Even though they might not feel like, we might not feel like they're totally committed to the program, that if they didn't have it, they wouldn't have anything. And so it's just, I wasn't able to do this in year 2 of teaching. It's been some thought about this and how it, kids are there for different reasons, and we have to reach them for different reasons. Some people will excel musically, and they'll be music majors and be the next Sam Palafian or something. But others, they have to have band because that is their band, choir, orchestra, whatever it is. That is like their place. I know kids that sleep at the band hall because they can't go home. Because the home life is so bad, and that's their sanctuary. So I would just try to empower them some way other than maybe the music part, and then get them in, and then, try to pull them into music.
Carol sort of touched on this too, about we have to have, especially in public schools, we have to have a persona on the podium and in the classroom with these kids. You got to think, there's no other teacher in that building that has these kids for 4 years. Literally. We have more influence over them than almost anybody else, almost any other adult in their life when they're in there. So for me, in addition to the music, in addition to this sanctuary that everybody's been talking about, it was also important to me. I like to have fun. And it was very important for me that those kids were coming to my classroom. What kind of crazy thing is he going to do today? That kind of drove them to come in there. And it's important that kids enjoy the process of making great music and that it's fun for them. So I kind of developed this outrageous teaching personality that has served me well most of the time, most of my career. Sometimes it bites me, but has served me pretty well most of the times in my career. And it's who I am. Two of the directors sitting here, I did their district band last week, and I would say pretty quickly I had 150 kids kind of eating out of the palm of my hand up there on that stage, just because of how I am and the fact that I am so excited to be working with them and making music with them and trying to make this thing fun. And that energy just kind of picks up, and pretty much most everybody will buy into it pretty quickly.
Brian, you want to talk maybe a little bit about some of the same challenges that you've experienced and ways you've tried to deal with them?
Yeah. So I have 2 concert bands at CB South. One is by audition, one's for anyone that wants to be in band. And a similar situation, the top band that I have here today is the one that's filled with the people that are extremely dedicated. They practice when they go home. They come in the next day, they're ready to go. And I'm kind of in a special situation this year where I took over last year in October under some difficult circumstances, and the kids were ready to move on from whatever happened, and they just took ownership of their program. So the seniors that I have this year, they just love band, and I'm able to play some really awesome music with them. But with my concert band, the younger kids, I'm trying to find a way to get them as energetic about the music. And I can't find that piece. With the symphonic band, I'm playing Symphonic Dance No. 3 that has 6 percussion parts in the back, this killer horn section, and low brass all over the place. And I went from 1 horn last year to 5 horns in that ensemble. I'm just really excited to play that music with them. And I go to my concert band that has like 17 alto saxes and 0 horns and 1 trombone and a tuba, and and 11 percussionists, of which 10 probably play drums and 1 plays mallets. And I'm trying to find the music for them to get them so excited as much as I did with the symphonic band. And I'm struggling, but then I kind of goes back to our first conversation with the rep that I'm choosing, and I'm finding older stuff. We're playing marching song, Holst's marching song right now with my concert band, and I didn't think they would like it. I thought that was going to be the vegetable of the concert, and every time I'm like, I say take out a certain piece, and they're like, oh, I really want to do marching song. I'm like, oh, okay, let's work on marching song for 20 minutes then. So it's kind of a struggle to find those pieces, and what I'm realizing now in year 2 is that it's not always the piece that I think they're going to enjoy that they actually enjoy. So I'm taking a lot of chances, and some are working better than others, but it's trying to find something that excites them and musically, but also touching on what Dr. Martin, Dr. Sedatal said, it's just finding something that is also consistent in a way that you don't know what's happening outside of the music room. So that's got to be their place of safety. It's a safe space. So I'm trying to put all these things together and do the best I can, so that hopefully the kids that I have this year in 10th grade, which the first year that I have at the high school, it's 10 through 12, that they have the same experiences, so that when they become 11th and 12th graders, they're excited as the group that I have this year. And I'm just hoping that works out. We'll see what happens after this group graduates in June, and we'll go from there. But it's a fun process, definitely.
Yeah, and for sure it's a process. So as you start to commit to some of these ideas that you're establishing, 2, 3, 4 years, when the band truly starts to become your own, in either case, surely you'll start to see some rewards. Jeff, you had mentioned something about honor bands and how you involve some of your younger kids. Maybe you want to mention that a little bit with Marywood?
Thanks. Yeah, we did, Marywood University does an honors band, and we did nominations, director nominations for who goes to the festival, and I thought about maybe not who my best players were, but who were going to practice the most to be able to do well in those settings. And I wrote down all the names, and the majority of the names were sophomores. Were younger students, which was pretty exciting.
Yeah. So rewarding those kids for working hard and being great members, and also setting a little bit of a standard within your program that says we're going to reward hard work and allow some additional experiences. Those younger kids in your program, maybe they start to buy into that over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So good. Sam?
This is fascinating to listen to, and the whole vegetable thing. I'm buying all of that. The idea of a proficient student helping you, they've bought into band, and they ask them to help you is an awesome thing. Could you practice the music with this student and lift his level? Because we're only good as our weakest person, and have this discussion with what sometimes we call them section leaders, but there's sometimes 3 deep people that could be of help. I spent the last 2 years with the Concord Blue Devils, and 2 years ago was fantastic. It's all veterans, and it was almost automatic that they would pursue excellence. Then 35 out of 75 horn players were rookies, And the veterans taught the rookies so well without being asked that by the time when they got serious, they were at the level of the year before. And that's without instruction. So the real tribute to them was the dedication that the veterans felt they owed the new people to share with them the experience of the year before. And that happens in a microcosm of your band. It's a pleasure to help. It's a pleasure to know you helped, and to go with something that John said, to acknowledge them at a band banquet or in front of the band that your help is why we're doing well is fantastic feeling. So it's there are rewards that are tangible and the ones that are give you goosebumps, you know, and you could you've got those kids. The other thing in my high school was it was possible because of study halls, which we don't have anymore in a lot of places, that the top band kids could mentor the concert band kids. That was a great thing. So we had a give back program basically. But anyway, there's a level there, instrumentally inside of the band that you could tap into. The other thing I just want to bring up, because it's not possible in all parts of the country, but as a traveler, going around, I'm seeing basically a grandparent kind of program where community band members that are retired are visiting band rooms. And there's a funny thing about high school age kids. They're getting into it with their parents. It's a natural part of the weaning process, you know. But their grandparents, they have fond feelings about. There's such a thing as a clarinet grandparent and an oboe grandparent. And they may not be a great instrumentalist, but they know a lot about practicing compared to this 15-year-old that they're working with. And their buy-in is beautiful. So that's something surprising to me, but it's always successful. It's always something the kids allude to. So there's a nice angle to take as well.
When we were talking about this over lunch, Carol brought up a great suggestion too. Those of us that have these programs where we have separation of a top band and a younger band and so on and so forth, to find a piece of music that both bands can play well and do a combined piece where the younger players are sitting next to the older players and getting to experience this simultaneously. I think that would go a long way, especially in your situation, to getting those younger kids excited about playing and playing well.
Yep, that's great. I'm reminded of something that you said last night, Andy, about announcing what you're going to play at least part of the program for the whole year, so that you're letting kids know what's coming up in the future. And I found a lot of success in when I was doing a work that was strange, that it worked so much better if I played a recording for the kids before they ever heard it. I mean, we did the Schwantner from A Dark Millennium, okay, in one of my, crazy moments, but I was committed to doing it, and I played a recording of it for the band. It was, extremely difficult for high school kids to do, but I played a recording for the students, and there was such an enthusiasm for the piece that they heard what it sounded like in its finished state, that they went home and practiced. I'm sure if I had put that piece of music in front of them in a rehearsal without, just like everything else, and just said, okay, we're going to play this piece, they probably would have fought me because it just sounded so strange. So that you were talking about finding pieces that your kids will connect with. That's, if you decided, okay, here are the 12 tunes that I want to try to do this year, I know I can only do 6. If you let them know and encourage them to, go on YouTube and listen to them, you might find the enthusiasm for it, because you're presenting them with a finished product, not starting to learn it from scratch. It's worth a try.
Yeah. Well, much like last night, some really great issues for us to continue discussion with. The group of directors who was around yesterday, they kind of let us know that they had a circle of directors that they got together with on a regular basis, and it's more of a social thing than anything, but just having a network for those people to bounce ideas off of each other and engage in this kind of conversation at times during the year, at regular times during the year, not just when they're going to a conference, or not just when they happen to be at a symposium like this, but developing that network of colleagues and musicians that we could always lean on and try to problem solve with becomes really important. Well, I hear the students making their way back from the master classes, and I think we're probably about ready to go for our final session. Hope you could, anybody who's watching on the web, join us for our concert show and tell hour around 3 o'clock, where we'll hear some more outstanding literature today from these bands. So thank you, folks.